In just 10 months, between 1 March and 31 December last year, the National Financial Ombud handled 35,855 complaints and recovered nearly 330 million rand on behalf of disgruntled South African consumers. Joining us via Zoom in the Group Editor Studio in George in the Garden Route is Reana Steyn, Head Ombud and CEO of the National Financial Ombud Scheme of South Africa, which only came into being on 1 March 2024 and, as you have just heard, is doing great work. Reana, thank you for your time.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting us.
Why do you receive so many complaints, and what are the most common complaints that you receive?
Well, in a way, I don't think it's many. 35,000 complaints that we finalized. If you think of all the financial transactions that happen in this country in that period, and we're talking about every banking transaction, every insurance transaction, there are millions. And we only received 35,000 complaints. So I think relatively, it's not a big number. Individual organizations that handle millions of transactions receive like a couple of hundred, at the most a couple of thousand, 1,000 or 2,000 complaints per annum. So I think relatively it's not a lot. I would like to, in a way, receive more, because I think then it will mean consumers know about the fact that they can come and complain to our office about financial services free of charge, which is very important. So in one hand, I think the fact that we didn't receive more complaints is partly due to lack of knowledge. And, maybe one would also like to think that the financial service providers are getting it right and that there's not a reason to complain.
You've recovered 330 million. Now, what type of complaints were these, where you could actually recover the funds for the
A big chunk of that comes from the life insurance division. Because as you can imagine, the claims that they deal with in that division are high value claims. We're talking about millions in some cases, in one complaint, a claim that wasn't paid out. So they've recovered almost 200 million of the 330 million in the life insurance division. But the other 130 million comes from the insurance, short-term insurance, and the banking division, and then a smaller amount from the credit division. So in banking, it's fraud, people suffering losses due to fraud, and it's often big amounts, It's 600,000 here and 500,000 there. And you can imagine also in the insurance division, where there's a claim rejected for a motor vehicle or household. Motor vehicle is the biggest, highest number of complaints in the short term and the non-life division. And, some vehicles are high value vehicles, and maybe the claim was rejected, and through our intervention, the claim is then paid out. So that's how those amounts are made up.
What I also want to ask you is, you say that about 32% of these claims come from rural areas where people are not necessarily so informed about financial products and so on. Now, even, people who are better educated or have trouble understanding these financial products, we sometimes feel that the financial advisors make it as difficult as possible for us to understand. So would there be an instance, for example, where I buy, say, insurance or life insurance or something, that I can then say, listen, but I didn't understand this and I didn't realize it would cost me so much, and at the end I would get out so little, where you would then be able to say, okay, it's null and void? Or doesn't it work like that?
Well, let me say that the general principle is no, it doesn't. You cannot sign a contract, put your signature to it, agree to it even telephonically, say you understand and you definitely agree to the terms, and then afterwards say, but you didn't understand and you didn't read. Unfortunately, our law does not allow that. However, we do listen to conversations. We actually listen to the conversations. We do investigate the full circumstances surrounding a contract. And if there is something that we can find that there's a reason to fight this general principle, If there's some fairness aspect that we can assist the consumer with, we will do so. But consumers must unfortunately not think that they've got, sort of a free ride here, that they don't have to read, and they can afterwards just say, I didn't understand, I didn't know, and I didn't read. The best thing is obviously to read before you sign. But, if you didn't read before you sign, then maybe at least when you go home, read that policy, read the contract, understand what you're in for. And if you then see, I don't understand what's going on here. I don't know why I'm paying this. I don't understand the clause. What am I covered for really? Then ask the questions, because often these are monthly contracts. You can get out of it.
You also say that because of the amount of complaints that come from rural areas, farm areas, small towns, that there needs to be a lot of education, training, in financial services products that, to sort of inform people. How can we go about doing that? Because okay, if a financial advisor comes to me, visits the farm and speaks to us and, okay, he wants to sell me a life annuity, for example. And I don't really understand it, and I don't have the insight to really understand that complex contract that I'm about to sign, or, where can I go for advice to say, listen, do you think this is a good product? Must I invest my little bit of money that I can spare in this?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a more difficult question. If you've already got a financial advisor, a trusted financial advisor, then that's maybe the person, a knowledgeable, trusted family friend, or maybe people that can assist you to understand the product before you enter into the contract. Offices like ours, and we are really trying to work with the financial services industry to make the information more available in plain and simple language. So that is, I think, what our role is. We try and go onto radio and TV and give advice, but it's few and far between. So we warn people about scams. We give advice about claims that we see, so that people don't fall into the same trap. We do that on radio stations and in newspapers, in press releases. But that's like a drop in the bucket. But we do our bit. I think the financial services providers they've definitely are hearing it more and more from our offices, from the regulators, that they need to make the contracts and the terms in simple and plain language and understandable. They also need to ensure there's an obligation on them to ensure that the clients understand the contracts that they enter into. So they do actually have to do something to say, do you understand what you're doing? Do you understand this product? So, we're trying it from all angles. And then, of course, if you're still not sure, if you're asking me where much to go and ask questions, I think you ask as many people as possible.
Tell us about the workings of the National Financial Ombud. Just give us an idea how, I want to lodge a complaint. Where do I start? What do I do?
So when you think you've got a problem with your financial services, whether it's the insurance, a banking, there's some problem in your bank account, or a credit agreement. And I just want to explain, because people don't always understand what is a credit agreement. It's all the clothing accounts, your motor vehicle finance, if it's not through a bank, because some of these, big motor dealers do their own finance. So those are credit agreements. Micro loans, personal loans, that's not through a bank. Those are credit. Then we've got all the bank products, and then we've got the insurance, life insurance and non-life insurance. So if you've got an issue, you go to our website, you Google, you will find the National Financial Ombud scheme. On our website, there is a complaint form, and you can just type in the information there. You can attach your supporting documents, and you say submit, and we receive the complaint on the other side. Alternatively, you can call. We've got a call center, quite a big call center that can assist you telephonically. They will ask you, do you want us to send you a complaint form? Do you want us to take the complaint telephonically? Most people opt out of that because it takes quite a while. You're on the phone for quite a while they then type the complaint for you. But some people do want that for whatever reason. Then the complaint is sent to that financial service provider. So we've received it, we've logged it, it's on a system, it's got a number, and we send it off and we say, we've received a complaint. What is your version? Here is the complaint, word for word what we've received. What do you say? What do you say to this complaint? What is your version and answer? And once we receive that answer, that complaint is allocated to one of our many adjudicators, legally qualified adjudicators. At the moment, we have about 160 staff members, 2 offices, one in Cape Town, one in Johannesburg. It's allocated to the right person because we've got specialty areas, and those people will then investigate. They will look at the complaint, they will look at the response, and more often than not, they will ask further questions. They will say, but why this? Where's that? Let me have this. Let me have sight of that. Probing questions until they have all the information in order to make a determination on paper. We're not a court of law, so we don't call the parties in to cross-examine them. We don't call in experts, but we're an alternative dispute resolution body. So we try and determine the dispute on the paper, on the evidence, and we give our opinion on what the correct outcome is with full explanation. So that is how the complaint is dealt with in our office, and it's free of charge.
So it's more sort of a mediation almost, and but you're quite successful in recovering, money for the people who feel aggrieved.
Sometimes it's a mediation, sometimes we mediate between 2 parties, but most of the time, this is not a mediation process. It is a investigation of the facts, and then providing our outcome to the parties, where they can then agree, disagree, and we make a recommendation. We will say, we think you should pay this amount, or we actually agree with the financial provider, you do not have to pay. And then the consumer may be dissatisfied. But that's really the process of ombud schemes worldwide and in any sphere. That's how an ombud works. It's an alternative to the courts. It's a free process, but we also employ experts with 20 years experience in the different areas. So we really do take our task very seriously. People who work there because they're absolutely passionate about helping people. And there's nothing more satisfying than helping a consumer and getting their money back for them, and changing their lives in many cases. In some instances, you can imagine, if you look at those 320 million, we change people's lives. It's a very, very satisfying job to do. So we're very passionate about it. So people, if you fight against them, they think we don't care, but that's really not the case.
Reana Steyn, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.